Beacon Church family. My name is Amy Mick. This is John Mick, and we are here today to present our section of 2 Kings to you. Last time we looked at chapters 3 through 5, where we read about the stories of King Ahab, the king of the northern kingdom of Israel. And we also looked at Elisha's care of 2 women that were in need. We've already seen miraculous works performed by Elisha, documentation of the power given to him to act as the Lord's prophet and for his people. In chapter 6, this is further evidenced during a building project. The men committed to working with the prophet came and asked for more housing. There seemed to have been a shortage of living space. Elisha consented and agreed to let them build more houses near the Jordan River.
So the group, including Elisha, goes to fell trees with which to build. During the building process, one of the workers loses an axe head and is despairing because it was borrowed. It must have been a valuable tool at the time. When informed, Elisha throws a stick into the place where it fell and floats it to the surface. The next section jumps immediately to another perspective, that of the king of Syria, who is at war with the northern kingdom, Israel. It's apparent that Elisha has extraordinary insight into where the Syrians will be and when, and he warns the king of Israel about the coming and going of the enemy. In chapter 6, verse 10, it explicitly states that he saved lives on multiple occasions. Well, word of the foreknowledge clearly gets around because the king of Syria is perturbed that there's a spy giving away his positions. But the servants tell him that no, it's a prophet, that the people of Israel, and he even knows the secrets, even knows the words that the Syrians speak in private. It's interesting that it doesn't appear to be a secret, and Elisha's ability is known to Israel's enemies.
So the Syrian king tells his men that they need to put an end to this spiritual spy. His advisors already know the location, and they send an army of horses and chariots to Dothan and surround Elisha by night. In the morning, Elisha's servants see the army, and fearing for their lives, ask him what to do. He tells them that they shouldn't fear, because the special foresight given to him by God told him that they're accompanied by a greater power than the army outside. Elisha then prays to God. He asks that the enemy be blinded, and God blinds them. Elisha then goes out, tells the blinded army that they're in the wrong place, but he can take them where they need to go, and he knows who they are after. Elisha leads this blinded army to the capital of Israel, Samaria, where he now asks God to unblind them, and God does. The king of Israel sees this vulnerable army in his town and is suddenly excited at the possibility of a quick and decisive victory. However, Elisha presents another option. Instead, he says to feed them and give them water and send them home. The king consents, and they are given a feast and sent on their way. The author says that the Syrians did not raid the nation of Israel again.
No, instead of raids, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, sends his whole army to Samaria and surrounds it, cutting off trade in and out. Naturally, the city grows short of the essentials soon, and they are running out of food. The people are unhappy and desperate for the food, and let the king know that they are despairing over their situation. The king blames Elisha and threatens to have him killed that very day. The king's message is that the Lord hasn't protected us now, so why should we wait for the Lord to act? But Elisha says that what the king sees right in front of his face, the dire situation, is not too big a problem for God. He goes further and says that the famine will be resolved quickly, which must have been a bold claim given how bad things were at the time. Some examples that the word had given us were how bad the economics were of the famine, that prices were hugely inflated, and people had even resorted to eating their own children to stay alive.
Elisha says that the food will be plentiful and cheap tomorrow, not a month from now, tomorrow. But he also said that the king's messenger, who was receiving this message, wouldn't be alive to eat any of it. There's a notable shift here in chapter 7, verse 3, where the story is told from the perspective of some people with leprosy at the city gate. They have an argument about where to die. We could die here, we could go to the Syrian camp, Maybe they'll feed us, maybe they'll kill us, but either way, we're dead." They do indeed go out to the camp that evening, but it's deserted. Everything is there, the horse and provisions, but the men are gone. The author then tells us God sent to the camp the sound of chariots and horses. The army believed they were being attacked and they fled. This reminds us when Elisha was in Dothan and referred to the army that was on their side, even though they weren't visible.
Now the message of what happened slowly makes it back to the king that the attackers have fled, but they wonder if it's a trick. Scouts are sent back and report that indeed the enemy left a trail of stuff for miles as they fled. The people in the city go out to plunder the camp in such haste that they trample the messenger that Elisha said would not be alive to see the cheap food that day. Chapter 8 transitions back to a familiar character then. In chapter 4, Elisha raised from the dead the son of a Shunammite woman. Now Elisha tells this same family that they should leave their home and travel to find food because of the famine that was coming. The family stays away for 7 years and comes back just in time to meet the king, who is talking and happens to be having a discussion with Elisha's servant Gehazi. The family then confirms to him what Elisha had done for them.
But in the intervening time, their home and lands have been taken over, leaving them without property and income. She asked the king to return the property and home she left behind. Following the instruction of Elisha had saved them, but had also come at a cost. Hearing this, the king ordered their house and land returned. Not only that, but he also ordered that the produce of the land from the time they left until that day also be returned to them. The story then continues with Elisha traveling to Syria. There, the king Ben-Hadad is sick and wondering if he will survive his illness. He sends his representative, Hazael, to Elisha, who they know as the man of God. The king wants to inquire of Elisha whether he will survive. He sends Hazael with 40 camel loads of gifts.
Elisha then receives Hazael, and he tells him to inform the king that he will recover. But then Elisha reveals only to Hazael that while the king will recover from his illness, he will still die. Elisha weeps as he says to the king that the king will be killed at the hands of Hazael himself, who will then go on to become king of Syria and will carry out all kinds of evil against the people of Judah. Hazael returns to King Ben-Hadad, where he does as Elisha foretold. He assures him that he will recover and survive before he actually murders him and takes the throne. We will return to Hazael a few more times as he wages war with Judah, but the chapter ends with the author returning back to the account of the kings of Judah. Both Jehoram and Ahaziah, descendants of Ahab, they're both mentioned as kings that are noted for how they walked in the ways of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord.